You started out, you talked about being around 10 years old or so, or 6 years old, was it, with the...
Randy was.
Okay.
Randy was 6 years old.
And you were 10 with the drums?
And when I started drums, I had just turned 12.
Just turned 12. So,
just turned 12.
So you start out on the drums at 12 years of age, and
Right.
you're learning how to do the rock and roll thing. You were talking a little bit about the Beatles beforehand, kind of coming out. And at some point, you became like a singer as well, and you were singing real hard stuff. And
That's a little bit later. The time, the way that the time frame works is when I started. And when I started drums, my mom made me do it the right way. I had to study with a drum teacher, and for a long time, you just have the snare drum, and you learn how to read. You have to learn how to read, and you have to do these things which the drummers in your audience will remember.
The rudiments.
Maybe cringe a little bit. They have to learn at least the 13, but more probably the 26 essential rudiments. And those are the maneuvers and things that drummers need to do. So I had to learn that stuff before I ever played. I never played a drum set for about 18 months. I had to learn the snare drum and the bass drum, and I had to learn about counting and sticking and all kinds of things like that.
So you go from that to vocals, you said, at some point.
Right. Well, what happened was this. I was in a band with my brother, and I was drumming, and I got to the point where it really kind of started to bore me. And this was like when I was about 20, 21 years of age. So I'd been a drummer for a while, and I thought I really would like to explore the aspects of actually working in the music business and doing something akin to publicity, or A&R, which stands for Artist and Repertoire, which all big record companies have. And I wanted to get into that aspect of it, and I got very, very lucky. I had a student. I used to teach during the summers at that time. I taught beginning drum students. And one of my students' father was a vice president at Capitol Records. And I casually mentioned to my student at that time, I would really like to get into that part. I'd like to do what your dad's doing. Or at least I'd like to see if that's what I'd like to do. And he said, are you being serious with me? And I said, yeah. And he goes, okay. Two days later, the phone rang, and I said, Steve, you're late for your lesson. And he goes, I'm not going to it today. He goes, you have to go down to Capitol right now. My father's going to get your job.
Oh, that's great.
And I said, for real? And he said, yeah. So I went down there, and when I got my job, they said, you did something very unusual, young man. And I said, what was that? And they go, usually people come into the personnel and human relations department and apply for a job. You got your job through a vice president of the entire record company. That's very unorthodox. So,
works out well.
And that was probably one of the best jobs I ever had in my life. I was a mailboy, and I worked in office services, and I got to work in conjunction with all the departments of the record company. And I learned how a record company worked. Now, it would be a little bit different these days because of the internet and because of everything that's going on. Record companies are not run like they were in the early 70s. That was kind of the halcyon years, and it was really, really, really a great experience. Mm-hmm. Great experience. I met all the Beatles. I all of them except George. I didn't meet George. Linda Ronstadt, Leon Russell, Steve Miller, Bob Marley. I met all those people. Wow. And so that was a great thing. But I've had a couple of attempts in my life where I tried to divorce myself from music for various reasons. That was the first unsuccessful attempt. And I got back in it. And when I got back in it, I decided that what I really wanted to do was be a frontman and to sing in front of bands. So I tried to do that. I had a terrible voice, and I didn't get very far. So my mom said, look, I'm going to bail you out here. I'm going to help you. Remember when I got you the drum lessons? And I said, yeah. She goes, I'm going to get you singing lessons. But you have to take it seriously, and you have to practice, and then you'll get better. Mm. So she hooked me up with a fine vocal teacher, a woman that I respect so much. And her name is Arlene Thomas. And she is a very, very good vocal teacher. Mm-hmm. She's great. And she turned me around. And I did that work for a long time. I started singing in bands seriously in 1977. I sang throughout the 80s and up into the 90s. And in 1994, for various reasons, I said, I can't handle this anymore. I can't do this. I really can't do it. I don't want to do it anymore. So I quit, and I delivered milk for a while. I was the milkman. Commercial accounts, not going to everybody's house and putting the glass bottles on the porch like in the old Andy Hardy movies. I actually delivered to hospitals and prisons and sanitariums. They were commercial milk accounts, and I tried to do that for a while. And then I came out of my second post-retirement, and I had kind of an epiphany in my life. I had a time when God showed me clearly what I was actually here to do. And this was kind of late in life. And it was clear to me, crystal clear, like a vision, that what I was put on this earth to do is to compose classical piano music. That's my gift, that's my forte, and that's what I really feel. That's what I really feel God wants me to do.
Well, I've heard clips, and you are a wonderful composer. And
Thank you.
musician.
That's very kind of you to say that.
It's
Thank you.
beautiful.
You know, going from the young child that's at the parochial schools and the Lutheran system and all that, to the rock and roll, and then to the record companies and all that, and then eventually discovering, like you said, through an epiphany moment, there must be some major issue that kind of went on at the epiphany moment type thing. If you can talk a little bit about that.
I'd be glad.
How did God come into your life to make you think in terms of classical music?
What happened was this. Even though I was delivering milk, and even though I was working on said second retirement from music, a strange thing happened. Now, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. I know that. I don't consider myself a very bright person, and I'm not. I don't want any sympathy. That's okay. That's just part of the package.
You're humble.
And so what happened was, they said to me, you know, Kelly, you keep driving these big trucks. You know, I was driving 26-foot bobtails with twin axles, and they said, you have to have a different license to drive these trucks. You cannot drive these trucks with a regular driver's license. You know, you need to get a commercial license. So they were kind enough to let me drive them for a while, but it was always understood that I would have to go to the DMV and secure a commercial driver's license. Well, I couldn't pass the test. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I tried probably 5 times. And at this particular time in life, this goes back exactly 10 years from this August. That's exactly when all this went down.
Okay.
My mom and I were talking one day, and she said, well, you know, she said, I'm not going to be here forever, and we have to figure out what we're going to do with our school. Are you going to take it over? Your sister's not going to take it over. My sister is involved in situations with her husband. Let me just say that her husband, she married into a third-generation Italian cabinet-making family, and they make beautiful, beautiful woodwork, superb, mantles, cabinets, and they were very successful, and they parlayed some of their money into orchards. And so my sister now helps her husband with the part of the wine. And if you ever see D'Argenzio wines, D'Argenzio table wines, that's my sis.
Okay.
So my sister would not be the person to take over the school. And also, even though she started with me and my brother in music, she started classical guitar, she did not continue in that vein. She had other things and other artistic things that she did that were more appealing to her. So what happened was, my mom and I had to come to kind of an understanding that if I wasn't going to be able to take the music school over, it probably wasn't going to last once my mom passed on. And I thought that I really would like to do that. And at that time, when I decided to do that, part of my decision was based on the fact that I would be working every day with my mother, and I would make her teach me every single thing that she could about the piano. Everything that I could learn. There's a lot she could teach me that I couldn't. I couldn't learn. I'm not the greatest reader. I do read music, but I'm not a great sight reader. And there are pieces that I could probably play if I heard them, but not to read them. So I decided at that time I want to continue with this wonderful school that we were so blessed to have my mother start. And she designed it. She worked in conjunction with an architect. She invented the name, and she physically laid the bricks on the path that leads up to the front door. And that's just too much to let somebody wreck and build an apartment building. There's a lot of history there, and there's a lot of people that come and make pilgrimages to that school. And it would be a sad thing to lose it.